To me, culture fit is so key. I spend most of my time hiring execs looking at culture. The biggest thing for me is trust. Sometimes I'm going to hire people that have a chip on the shoulder or they need to prove something, but I can trust them. They will work really, really hard and they'll be open with me. You have to be able to have some sort of fabric with a working relationship that you can rely on, and mine is trust.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Well, welcome to the Growth Think Tank. This podcast is really for you if you want to lead fast growth, you want to be a part of fast growth, and you want to keep abreast of everything it takes to sustain growth and to expand yourself as a leader. Today, we have a very special conversation where we talk about the intricacies of the evolution of culture, how culture must continuously change as the company grows. Things require attention, and you must be proactive about that. This is what I believe. This is what I see with my clients. And today we have a very special guest. We have the CEO founder of Exabeam. Exabeam is in the IT technology space and security space. They really are a leader in their market. But beyond that, they are number 12 on the Inc. list. They did over 14,000% growth in 3 years, and they had over 18 million in revenue, and they've continued to grow past that. We give you some of the details in the interview, but what I liked most about this conversation was Nir just sharing with us about the importance of culture and how important that is as the company evolves and changes. And I hadn't thought about this as much as he has, obviously, but he's currently in the midst of working on another evolution of culture, and I really is excited to bring with you the details from our conversation. I really think that you'll find if you value your employees, then you will love this interview. Thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews in the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. So you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Grow Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. Hi, Nir. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because having a chance to connect with you about what it takes to not only grow but also sustain growth over a period of time with a culture that really does support the growth of the company is what I love to do. So tell us a little bit about Exabeam and your role there.
Okay, so we are about almost 6 years old. We started in 2013, and we've been on hyper growth since. We are close to about 400 employees right now worldwide. This is kind of our second gig, part of, we had a prior company, it was part of a group, a company called Imperva, got longer or larger. It took a longer time to get there. So here it's much more condensed in time, and kind of the growth trajectory is just higher. We're just enjoying the ride.
Well, I want to just highlight some of the growth numbers here. And I know this is last year's numbers, but you were number 12 on the Inc. list. You were 14,000%, which most people would go, I can't even fathom 14,000%. That's right at about 18.8 million last year's revenues. Have you continued growth this past year?
Yes, we have. Growth isn't stopping. It's not slowing down. It's sometimes kind of, you feel like you're in a rocket ship and it's just growing and growing. And sometimes in a rocket ship, there's a lot of G-force coming to you, and it's a lot of pressure that puts on you. And the question for us is, how do we remove as much as we can the G-force and the pressure? Some of it is kind of inevitable. Some of it, is things that you can kind of work on. I think that for us, because we're trying to solve a very, very big problem, we play in a market called security management. It's a multi-billion-dollar market. We're fighting very big behemoths, replacing them in very big logos. And most of the time we have to spend, it's not what to do, it's what not to do. And it's all the equilibrium of how do I remove as much friction as I can, but still kind of keep the trajectory of growth. And then how do I make sure that I have enough fuel, and that's the people and kind of the processes to be able to continue to push forward. It's for us, it's not about the opportunity. It's all about what you would call the execution.
When you think about, leading a fast growth company, I know that culture is very important to you, but why do you think growth is so important? Because some people would say, you could just double or triple, or even for some people 10x in a year. And you're thinking, well, why do you grow so fast?
Because, if you don't, you may die. Because you're fighting I'm talking about it, I don't get into kind of very kind of catastrophical kind of like, but the idea is that when you're going after a very big market, you have to be relevant. In order to be relevant, you need to be able to capture market share. And in every market, there's what's called a tech refresh, which means that that old regime is getting replaced by a new regime, and timing is very important. You need to become relevant as quickly as possible. And the only way to be relevant is get that market share, which means growth. That's kind of, it's the bigger the market, in essence, the more that's the opportunity, because I think about that as kind of the blue waters you have to play in. And the quicker the tech refresh and the timing taking place determines, the velocity that you need in order to capture that blue water.
Well, I want to center our conversation on, you mentioned how important execution is. And execution is no longer you sitting at the keyboard, probably writing code and thinking through these things. You're hiring smart people to do the work for the company as a whole and to create this new opportunity and create the growth. So, when you were first starting out, how much emphasis do you put on culture as you were growing the company?
We did a lot. So I remember we were 5 people, and we decided that we need to define our culture. Who are we? And it really comes from the founders, and we kind of sat together and kind of like said, this is our belief. This is who we are. This is, the baby we want to create. And we articulated it, and we put it on paper, and we put it on the website. But then you need to remind people of culture, and you also have to test people against the culture. And you have to be true to it. So you have to take action if things don't fit your culture. And we did it very, very early on. And since then, for all hands I have, every time we bring in new hires, it's all around presenting the culture. Also, when we bring in kind of talent acquisition and recruits, you need to be able to test the people, will they fit this culture? And that's kind of, you just need to explain the world. This is our belief. This is who we are, and this is how we act. And if you do not fit within this, you're not going to be successful within the organization.
Give me an idea of some of the things that you had put in that belief in that first iteration of the company that defined who you were.
So you easily can go to our website to kind of see it. But the first is we work together and win together. That's one thing. And this is something I took from the Army, also the prior company. I spent a lot of years in the Army, and you kind of create camaraderie. And the reason you create camaraderie is because you want people to rely on each other. When you go into battle, a war, companies like a war, you go into multiple battles along the way. And some battles you will win, some of them you will lose. And the most telling about a group is how do they react when they lose a battle. Well, we may lose a very big deal. We have tried to put our best foot forward. We use wrong tactics. We had maybe issues with the product. It could be so many different things. Build the right relationship. Who knows what it is? There's issues. What we are going to be tested on is the way we react when things don't go well. And to me, you need to build camaraderie and trust amongst the people to be able to say, how do we react when things go the wrong way? And that comes with finger pointing. And there's a very fine line between doing a root cause analysis and figuring out like a post-mortem, how do we become better, versus just throwing blame. So this is kind of what we work on, figuring out what was the root cause, what to do wrong, in a very, I would say, vulnerable way. It means that a lot of our execs, we sit on these exec meetings, and we all say about what our teams and what we did wrong. And we have to be vulnerable to that, because we need to trust that the other people in that room are okay with that, when you taking accountability and responsibility. And that's kind of all about creating camaraderie and how we win together, work together. Another one is kind of the no ego mentality. I think that it's very hard, especially in the Valley. You bring in a lot of successful people. How do you find people that don't think that they're better from everybody else? A no ego policy is I think really important, and you will find bad apples from time to time, where they went through the cracks, they fell through the cracks. Then it becomes, how do you react to that? Can you show the world, and by that your people, that you are being true to your culture and pushing out people that are bad apples?
You had talked before about the evolution of a fast growth company. You said you've been around about 5 or 6 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's certain places where culture has to be redefined. How do you know that culture has to be redefined? Like, what are you feeling or sensing inside the leadership?
Yeah, you start getting burned here or there. I'll give you an example. One is, we have a very transparent culture, very open communication. We talk about everything, and we present all the financials and all the numbers and everything. We give heads up on different strategic moves that we're doing. And as kind of the company grows, you have a lot of people that feel less connected to corporate or to the organization, because they're remote or because they're new. A company card, when you're going so quick, from moving to being a toddler to being a teenager could be a matter of a year, right? And you're bringing in people that can grow the company further, so they can take it from being a teenager to an adult. And they're meeting the folks that have already been here, that have been kind of like, the early regime, kind of reminiscing on when they were a toddler. So when you have a situation when it comes to open communications, you may find yourself, giving hints, to the market about future roadmap, or giving hints to the market about your financials or about anything like that. So you have to be selective on what you share and what you don't, when you have a company that's, could be 600 people.
Now, I want to break in here for a second, because Nir talked about transparency. Now, you may have a very different understanding of how transparency works inside your company. HubSpot is a unique company that grew very fast before they became a publicly traded company. Now, as a publicly traded company, you have certain restrictions that are put on you by the SEC and all the governing bodies of these publicly traded companies around financials, around secrets and strategies and all of this stuff. And you must be a designated insider. Well, transparency meant so much to HubSpot that they really wanted to create the kind of communication and trust that allowed people to be transparent. So they went through the whole process of making every employee a designated insider. Now, I share this with you because they valued transparency to the point of they were willing to go beyond normal measures and really push the boundaries of what transparency is. So my question to you is, how are you treating transparency inside your company? Do you still have a conversation for this group over here? Maybe it's the leadership team, and then you have another conversation or another version of the truth that you give to a broader set of teams or externally to the world. I know we have to draw lines and boundaries around transparency, but the question is your idea of transparency growing your company? Now back to the interview. So when you talk about the triggers of this, and maybe we should start with this, why do you believe that culture has to change over time? Because many people believe it's a foundational element, and I know not everything changes, but why do you believe that culture changes as the company grows?
Because for every company, when you start small, it's very family, very, correct and warm. And then when it grows, it becomes more and more corporate. There's foundations that don't have to change, but they're all kind of like nuances to those foundations. You still need to try to maximize what you can say to your team so they feel inclusive in everything that happens. You're not just talking about positive, so it's kind of the good, the bad, the ugly kind of a perspective. But when you're talking about futures, for example, you can ask me about roadmap, and I'm not going to share my roadmap with you. And press ask that all the time, and because I don't want the world to know what I'm working on. Or you can try to ask me about my financials, and I won't share it with you because you're not part of the circle of trust. So there's multiple elements. There's multiple elements to these things, and as you grow, you have to be kind of selective that I'm not going to share everything, blindly. I am going to try to maximize what we do. Something is also compliance. I think we talked about a company, you mentioned a company that even when they went public, continue to share all their financial, their employees, and everyone signed as being an insider. And it's a big kind of like ordeal, I think, for the employees to take and for the corporate to take. But for us, as you become public, you can't share anymore your trajectory and your financials with the employees. They just can't, because if they see that, they become insiders, and there could be insider trading. So that's an interesting selective. You're saying from this point on, according to SOX and the SEC, I will not share financials only with a closed team, which is my insiders. That's just a typical kind of like your culture's changed. You used to, and now you don't.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I know some of the things that you do to reinforce culture, and you put a lot of emphasis on communication.
Yep.
You have a tool that you use on you have retreats twice a year. Is that about right?
Yep.
Who do you invite to those retreats?
There's two types of retreats. There's kind of like my direct reports, which is one, and there's one that is more broader management, kind of one layer below. Think about it that way. An exercise I do is an exercise I kind of learned from the Army, which is, it's kind of like a 360, but it's a bit more complicated than that. You go and you ask every team to rank their communication with everybody else. So they are in the center and they put everybody else. How are they doing? And it gets green, great, amber, some issues, red, we have a problem. And when they have kind of like either it's amber or red, they have to explain what are the issues and what do they think would be plausible solutions. And by doing that, kind of I send it to each one of the teams, and they kind of aggregate it into a heat map. So everybody can kind of see what everybody else has said about them. And then you can really see the hot spots, where you do have communication issues that we have to work on. It's just a way for us to bubble it up, talk about our issues. You want to talk about the bad things. You want to have a medium to do it. You want to fix it. And that's my way. So it's been up until now working well.
You call this the communication heat map, right?
It's the communication heat map. That's what it is.
How does it give you insight to improving communication amongst the team?
Because I think sometimes people don't talk about the problem. They make the relationship very cordial, kind of very corporate-y like. And you have to create enough trust. It goes back to camaraderie, back to the open communication, where we feel comfortable to talk about what's wrong. If we don't, we're not going to fix it. So that's just a way to kind of force it. Everybody's going to be open, and you'll have to be open because they're going to say something about you. And if you feel that it's not well, you'll have to, you'll see it. That just allows me to find the hotspots. That's why it's the heat map. And then have an open communication about what do we do about it.
When you think about the mistakes of your leadership going forward, and again, I invite you to be as open as you can with me, but what's something you've learned about fast growth that you wish you would have known looking back?
There's multiple to that. There's always the question, am I hiring an exec too early? And we've had that. And that means that, you'll have failures and repercussions that come from that. What I've learned in the hyper growth is every mistake creates a very big ripple effect. The faster the growth, it could be even a small sin can have a very big aftermath. And that's kind of why I think it's really hard and such kind of rarefied air, because in order for you to continue to do that, you kind of have to be almost perfect. Because every small hit to this missile that's kind of giving the G-force is either slowing it down or changing its course. And that's, it's something that you have to be, the time to fix mistakes is crucial. And you make mistakes. And the question is, how open are you to kind of the moment you get a hunch that something's wrong, how much time does it take you to fix it? And it's hard. It is not easy at all. We've done mistakes and we've had ripple effects, and it's hard.
Nir, is this one of the reasons why one of the common principles of fast growth companies is they make decisions very fast? They're able to see a problem and really stop it before it gets to be too great. Whereas some companies kind of ponder and delay and committee-eyes the process, but a fast-growing company is able to just really move with nimble
and fail
accuracy.
Yeah, and fail fast. That's the key.
Now, I do know that a lot of fast-growth companies have a different relationship with failure. So I want to kind of give you a chance to talk about you don't avoid failure, you probably embrace it. Would you agree to that?
Yes. The question is, how do you react to it, or how does your org react to the failure? And what do you learn from it? How do you make sure you're not repeating your mistakes?
When you think about, taking what you've learned about failure and having conversations with your leadership team, getting them to accept that, failure is not something we're avoiding. We have to fail forward. We have to, as we innovate, by definition, we're doing things that no one's ever done.
You're right. That's all okay. But think about when you're becoming a teenager now. You're not a toddler anymore, and not everybody is so close to decision making. And they see you come up with an idea, try to do it, and very quickly decide that was a bad idea and fail it. They feel that the company is zigzagging. They feel that they were sent into combat and you retreat them very quickly. And they're not used to that because the culture they came from isn't that.
Yeah.
And now that's kind of it goes back to, how do you make sure that, as you're changing your behaviors, for the culture, people acknowledge why decisions are being made. And it's very, very hard because it happens all the time. You have these fail fast all the time. And you're sending troops in and they feel bought into what you're sending them to do. And then you suddenly tell them, even before they got to, it's kind of their first gate, you're saying, no, bad idea, ripper back. It's hard. It's very hard because you call it leading it from the trenches, but because there's so many small groups there, the decision was made back in kind of headquarters. And it's hard for them to recognize why did you fail. So you need to have a way to have a leader within kind of in that trenches that can convey that message to that SWAT team you just sent them on a mission. That, why they had to revert back.
Let's stop right there for a second. Failure. What is your relationship to failure? How do you see failure inside your organization? I know fast-growing companies are making fast decisions. They're willing to fail. They're willing to let employees take ownership and fail forward. And as long as they have the capability to identify those failures quickly and often, and then they reiterate, they recast the next step, and they move forward, and they just iterate on that over and over and over. Failing fast is not a bad thing. And failure is certainly not bad, because as you're innovating, as you're pushing the boundaries within your company and doing things that people have never done, you're bound to fail. If you're playing so safe that you don't fail and you don't allow people or empower them to fail forward, then you won't have this pace of growth or innovation that you need to sustain this growth. This is my take on it. This is my view. I work with companies just on this very subject of how do you lead this kind of innovation inside of companies. I'd love to talk to you about yours, but now back to the interview with Nir. Well, I appreciate you sharing your insights on fast growth. One last question I have for you is, you've got new managers coming on board all the time, and leaders. What's one piece of advice you give new leaders of fast growth companies?
To me, culture fit is so key. I spend most of my time hiring execs looking at culture. The biggest thing for me is trust. Sometimes I'm going to hire people that have a chip in the shoulder, or they need to prove something, but I can trust them. They will work really, really hard, and they'll be open with me. You have to be able to have some sort of fabric with a working relationship that you can rely on, and mine is trust. We have a lot of competent people, but I need to trust you, because I am not going to micromanage you. I'm sending you, and you're going to be self-sufficient, and you're going to know what to do. I just need to know that you will be trustworthy to talk about the good, but also the bad. And you're not going to hide things, and you're not going to manage up. And it's hard.
Well, Nir, thank you for being here on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your insights. And I'm really excited about you being here with your expertise and growth.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Wow, what a fantastic interview. Really love some of the things that he was talking about. I'm learning as I go here, because I have been interviewing so many people, but there's so much to this conversation of growth. Hopefully you're enjoying Growth Think Tank, and you're willing to share this with someone that you think would be perfect for this. I would love for you to reach out to me, give a rating review on iTunes or whatever platform you listen to let us know what you do. That's the best thing you can do, so that we can share the podcast with the right people. As always, lead with courage, and I'll talk to you next time.